Greta stares at Amanda Harper across the conference table, stunned. "Your evening MBA is unprofessional," the CEO's niece announces with a smirk. 5 years of exceptional performance evaluations suddenly mean nothing. Greta hands over her laptop, her hands trembling with rage. 2 weeks later, she watches from across the street as SEC agents enter WealthMatrix Financial. Through the glass walls, she sees the lead auditor confront her former boss. "Where's your registered chief compliance officer?" The CEO glances at the org chart. His hand starts to shake. We. I never imagined my commitment to education would cost me my job. For 5 years, I had poured my heart into WealthMatrix Financial, rising from entry-level analyst to senior financial analyst through consistent hard work and dedication. My quarterly performance reviews always exceeded expectations. I had personally brought in 3 major institutional clients worth millions in annual revenue. My models and projections were frequently showcased in company presentations to prospective investors. When I decided to pursue my MBA through Westridge Business School's evening program, I was careful to ensure it wouldn't interfere with my work responsibilities. I chose the program specifically because classes were held from 6:30 to 9:30 at night, well after business hours. I completed assignments on weekends and studied during my lunch breaks. If anything, my coursework was enhancing my contributions to WealthMatrix, bringing fresh perspectives and cutting-edge methodologies to our financial products. Thomas Harper, our CEO, initially seemed supportive when I mentioned my educational plans during a company holiday party. "Always good to have more educated people on the team," he had said, raising his champagne flute before moving on to schmooze with potential clients. Thomas was known for his commanding presence and ambitious vision for the company. At 52, he had built WealthMatrix from a small advisory firm into a recognized player in the financial services industry, with over $3 billion under management. Everything changed when Amanda Harper joined the company as Vice President of Operations. From day one, she made it clear she was more than just another executive. "Uncle Thomas thinks it's time we modernize our approach," she announced during her first all-hands meeting. At 32, Amanda had a resume that seemed impressive, but vague, with consultant positions at firms I had never heard of despite my years in the industry. My immediate supervisor, Jackson Pierce, warned me quietly after that meeting. "Be careful around Amanda. She's already pushed out 2 senior managers who disagreed with her vision." Jackson was one of the good ones, a meticulous 45-year-old manager who knew the business inside and out. He protected his team whenever possible, but even his influence had limits. I first noticed Amanda watching me during a lunch break 3 months after her arrival. I was sitting alone in the break room, reviewing a case study for my corporate governance class while eating a salad. "Burning the candle at both ends?" she asked, her tone deceptively casual. "Just some reading for my MBA program," I replied, closing my textbook. "All done on my own time." Amanda nodded with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ambitious. Just make sure your focus stays where it belongs." The following week, I noticed my name missing from the quarterly strategy meeting invite. When I asked Jackson about it, he frowned. Amanda suggested we streamline participation. I fought for you, but she insisted we needed to keep it to department heads only. Over the next month, Amanda's campaign against me intensified. Tasks that had always been my responsibility were reassigned without explanation. My input was increasingly dismissed in meetings, with Amanda often interrupting me mid-sentence. "Let's move on to solutions that align with our current direction," she would say, effectively silencing me. Stephanie Williams from accounting, one of my closest allies at WealthMatrix, started passing me warnings. Stephanie was a 38-year-old single mother who had been with the company almost as long as I had. Amanda was asking about your error rate yesterday, she told me one day by the coffee machine. I told her you have the cleanest reports in the division, but she kept pushing for instances where you missed something. Then came the accusations. Brian Taylor, Amanda's executive assistant, began spreading rumors that I was using company time for schoolwork. Brian was 27, ambitious, and completely loyal to Amanda. Just looking out for company interests, he would say with a shrug when confronted about his gossip. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning when Thomas's assistant summoned me to a meeting in the main conference room. Thomas sat at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable but resolved. Amanda sat to his right, a folder open in front of her. Greta, we need to discuss your future with WealthMatrix, Thomas began, not quite meeting my eyes. Your divided focus has become a concern, Amanda continued smoothly. We've documented several instances where your schoolwork has interfered with company priorities. What instances? I demanded, genuinely confused. I have never missed a deadline or delivered substandard work. Amanda slid several papers across the table. They were internal reports I had prepared, each marked with trivial corrections in red pen. These errors might seem minor individually, but collectively, they represent a pattern of distraction. I glanced through the marked errors, my confusion turning to anger. This comma placement is a stylistic choice, not an error. And this terminology is directly from our own internal style guide. Your evening MBA is unprofessional, Amanda pronounced, as if delivering a verdict. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to WealthMatrix. We need team members who are fully invested in our success, not distracted by personal goals. Jackson tried to intervene. Greta has consistently exceeded performance metrics. Her work has actually improved since starting her program. Amanda silenced him with a look. The decision has been made, Jackson. HR has already processed the paperwork. Thomas finally spoke again. We're letting you go, Greta. Effective immediately. Standard severance applies. The room spun around me. 5 years of dedication dismissed in 5 minutes. As Amanda smirked across the conference table, I realized this had nothing to do with my performance. I was a threat to her authority, perhaps to her long-term plans for her position in the company. A security guard waited outside the conference room. I was given 20 minutes to clean out my desk while Brian Taylor watched, ostensibly to ensure company property was returned. My colleagues avoided eye contact as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. Only Stephanie dared to approach, slipping me her personal number on a sticky note. "This isn't right," she whispered. "Call me later." I handed over my laptop, my hands trembling with rage rather than sadness. As the security guard escorted me to the elevator, I noticed something strange. My access badge was collected, but when I passed the server room, the light on the security panel briefly flashed green. The IT department had deactivated my primary credentials, but had forgotten to remove my emergency access to critical systems, granted during last year's system upgrade, when I had volunteered to help the understaffed IT team. That seemingly insignificant oversight would prove to be Amanda and Thomas's biggest mistake. The weeks following my termination were a blur of anxiety and disbelief. My severance would cover only 2 months of expenses, and my student loans for the MBA program loomed large. I applied for 7 positions at competing firms, but despite promising initial interviews, each opportunity mysteriously evaporated after the reference check phase. After the 3rd rejection, I called Stephanie. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from WealthMatrix. "They're blackballing you," she confirmed, stirring her latte nervously. Amanda told the executive team not to provide references. She implied you were terminated for ethical concerns rather than performance issues. That's defamation, I protested, my voice rising enough that a nearby customer glanced over. Everything in my file was exemplary until she arrived. Stephanie lowered her voice. There's more going on, Greta. Things haven't been right since Amanda came on board. The quarterly reconciliation reports don't match our internal records. Client funds are being moved between accounts without proper documentation. That's not just administrative sloppiness, I said. Professional concern overriding my personal grievance. That's potentially illegal. I know. I tried bringing it up to the accounting director, but he shut me down. Said Amanda and Thomas have authorized a new investment strategy that requires more flexible fund management. Stephanie's words triggered a memory. 2 months before my termination, I had flagged several client reports that contained projections far more optimistic than our actual performance data justified. Thomas had personally assured me that the discrepancies were simply a matter of alternative calculation methodologies. At the time, I had accepted his explanation, though it had never felt quite right. Who's overseeing compliance with SEC regulations? I asked. Stephanie hesitated. That's another thing. After Darren Williams retired as Chief Compliance Officer 6 months ago, they never replaced him. Amanda's been signing off on compliance documents, but she's not registered with the SEC. My blood ran cold. A firm of WealthMatrix's size was legally required to have a registered Chief Compliance Officer. Operating without one was a serious violation. That night, I couldn't sleep. What had started as personal injustice now seemed like something far more sinister. If WealthMatrix was mishandling client funds and misrepresenting performance to investors, countless people could lose their savings. At 3 a.m, I made a decision. My access badge might still work for the server room. I could gather evidence of the company's practices and determine if my suspicions were justified. The next evening, I dressed in business attire that wouldn't stand out if anyone saw me. I arrived at the WealthMatrix building at 8:30, when many financial professionals were still working late. I nodded confidently to the night security guard, flashing my badge quickly without giving him time to examine it closely. Forgot my presentation materials for tomorrow, I explained. He waved me through without question. My heart pounded as I took the elevator to the 14th floor. The office was mostly empty, with just a few lights on in distant cubicles. I made my way to the server room, praying my access hadn't been revoked. I held my breath as I pressed my badge to the reader. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the light flashed green, and the door clicked open. Inside, I connected to a terminal and logged in with my emergency credentials. For the next hour, I navigated through the company's financial records, copying suspicious documents to an encrypted flash drive. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Client funds had been transferred to offshore accounts for temporary investment opportunities that were never fully documented. Performance reports showed returns of 12 to 15%, while actual account statements reflected gains of only 4 to 6%. The discrepancies were covered by moving funds between accounts before quarterly reporting periods. Most damning of all, I found no evidence of a registered Chief Compliance Officer. Instead, I discovered compliance documents backdated to before Darren's retirement, signed by Amanda with Thomas's approval. These weren't just regulatory oversights. They were deliberate attempts to deceive both clients and regulators. As I prepared to leave, I heard voices approaching. Quickly disconnecting the flash drive, I slipped into a supply closet adjacent to the server room. Through the crack in the door, I saw Thomas and Amanda entering the server room. The SEC has been asking questions about our compliance structure, Thomas was saying, his voice tense. "We need to accelerate the documentation process." "Don't worry," Amanda replied confidently. "I've prepared all the backdated forms. No one will know we've been operating without proper oversight. Besides, once we complete the public offering next month, it won't matter. We'll have enough capital to hire an entire compliance department. And the fund transfers? Untraceable. I've been careful." Their voices faded as they entered the server room, but I had heard enough. WealthMatrix was planning to go public, which would bring in thousands of new investors. They would be buying into a company built on fraudulent practices. I slipped out of the building, clutching the flash drive that contained evidence of serious financial crimes. The question was, what should I do with it? The evidence burned a hole in my pocket as I wrestled with my next steps. I had obtained the information through unauthorized access to WealthMatrix's systems. If I came forward, I could potentially face criminal charges myself, but if I remained silent, countless investors would be defrauded. The next day, I attended my business ethics class at Westridge Business School. Dr. Laurie Mason was discussing whistleblower protections under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. After class, I approached her with a hypothetical situation. "Dr. Mason, if someone discovered financial fraud at their former employer but obtained the information after their termination, would whistleblower protections still apply?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That's a very specific hypothetical, Greta. The method of discovery could complicate things legally, but the Dodd-Frank Act provides certain protections regardless of how information was obtained, as long as the disclosure is made through proper channels." She handed me her card. "If this hypothetical person needs guidance navigating those channels, tell them to contact me. Financial fraud harms real people with real lives and savings. Sometimes doing the right thing requires courage." The following evening, I received a text from Stephanie. "Company, wide email about security system upgrade. IT doing complete overhaul of access protocols next week." My window was closing. If I was going to gather more conclusive evidence, it had to be now. That night, I made my final visit to WealthMatrix. Using the same approach as before, I gained access to the building and the server room. This time, I was more thorough, downloading client account statements, internal memos about the public offering, and emails between Thomas and Amanda discussing how to handle regulatory inquiries. I found documentation of the company operating without a registered chief compliance officer for over 6 months, a clear violation of SEC regulations. I discovered evidence that client funds were being used to inflate the company's assets under management ahead of the public offering. Most disturbing were Amanda's emails outlining how to create the appearance of regulatory compliance without actually following the rules. Before leaving, I carefully documented the file paths and timestamps of everything I accessed. If questions arose later about how I obtained the information, I wanted to be transparent about my methods, even if they were unauthorized. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the SEC's whistleblower office. The second was to Stephanie, warning her to be careful and to preserve any evidence she had access to. 3 days later, I met with Diana Rodriguez, an SEC investigator, at a federal building downtown. Diana was a no-nonsense professional in her late 40s with 20 years of experience investigating financial fraud. "I need to be clear," I told her at the beginning of our meeting. "I obtained this information after my termination using access credentials that should have been deactivated. I'm not trying to hide that fact." Diana nodded. "The SEC is concerned with the substance of the allegations, Miss Walker. Your methods may complicate matters, but they don't negate the seriousness of what you're reporting. The whistleblower program was designed specifically to encourage individuals to come forward with evidence of wrongdoing. For the next 2 hours, I walked her through everything I had discovered. She asked pointed questions about WealthMatrix's operations, the timing of certain transfers, and the reporting structure of the company. Based on what you've shown me, there are multiple potential violations here, she said finally. Operating without a registered chief compliance officer alone is serious, but the misrepresentation to clients and potential securities fraud related to the public offering elevate this significantly. What happens now? I asked. We'll open a formal investigation. That process can take time, sometimes months. In the meantime, you should consult with an attorney who specializes in whistleblower cases. The SEC provides certain protections, but having your own counsel is advisable. Will WealthMatrix know I'm the one who came forward? We protect whistleblower identities to the extent the law allows. However, given the specific nature of the information you've provided, they may be able to deduce the source. The waiting period that followed was excruciating. I continued my MBA classes, but each day brought new anxiety. Would the SEC act before the public offering? Would Thomas and Amanda somehow cover their tracks? Had I put myself at legal risk for nothing? 2 weeks into the investigation, Stephanie called me in a panic. They know something's up, she whispered. Thomas has ordered an internal audit of all client accounts. Amanda is personally reviewing all compliance documentation. They're shredding papers every night. Have they mentioned me? I asked. Not directly, but Amanda keeps talking about disgruntled former employees who might try to damage the company. Greta, I'm scared. I think they suspect I've been talking to you. Be careful, I urged her. Don't take any risks. The SEC is investigating, but these things take time. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. The public offering is scheduled for next month. Prospectus claims 12% average annual returns for managed accounts. Actual returns less than half that. I forwarded the message to Diana. Her response was immediate. This accelerates our timeline. We'll need your formal testimony next week. What had started as a personal injustice had evolved into something much larger. I was no longer just fighting for my reputation or career. I was fighting for the thousands of investors who would be deceived if WealthMatrix's fraud continued unchecked. As I prepared my formal statement for the SEC, I realized that my MBA education had prepared me for this moment in unexpected ways. The courses in corporate governance, business ethics, and financial regulations had given me the vocabulary and framework to understand exactly how WealthMatrix was violating the law. What Thomas and Amanda saw as a liability had actually empowered me to stand against their corruption. The SEC moved with unexpected speed once they learned about the impending public offering. Diana called me on a Monday morning, her voice tense with urgency. We're accelerating our investigation. Our team will be visiting WealthMatrix tomorrow for an unannounced audit. Can you provide any additional operational details that might help us navigate their systems? I spent 2 hours on the phone with Diana and her team, explaining WealthMatrix's filing system, the location of key documents, and the company's organizational structure. I identified which employees might be knowingly complicit and which were likely unaware of the fraudulent activities. The next morning, I couldn't resist watching the SEC's arrival. From a coffee shop across the street, I observed 5 agents entering the WealthMatrix building at precisely 8 o'clock. Through the glass walls of the lobby, I watched them present credentials to the security desk and proceed to the elevators. Stephanie began texting me updates. SEC agents on 14th floor. Thomas looks like he's seen a ghost. They're asking for compliance documentation, Amanda trying to redirect them to marketing. Lead auditor asking about chief compliance officer position. Thomas stuttering. The last text made me smile despite my anxiety. Auditor asked, "Where's your registered chief compliance officer?" CEO checked org chart. His hand started shaking. Said, We. Then Amanda jumped in with excuses. I imagined the scene. Thomas Harper, always so confident and commanding, reduced to stammering as his fraudulent house of cards began to collapse. My satisfaction was short-lived. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Greta Walker? The voice was male, professional, clipped. Yes. Who's calling? This is James Wentworth from Harper and Associates. We represent WealthMatrix Financial. We have reason to believe you have engaged in corporate espionage and theft of proprietary information. We are preparing to file civil charges unless you immediately cease communication with the SEC and turn over all company documents in your possession. My heart raced, but I remembered Diana's advice. I have no comment. Please direct all communication to my attorney. I hung up before he could respond. Minutes later, my email pinged with a message from an anonymous account. Corporate spies get what they deserve. Hope your MBA was worth it. I forwarded both the voicemail and email to Diana, who responded immediately. This is witness intimidation. Document everything. We're assigning protection. That evening, the story broke on local financial news. SEC investigating WealthMatrix, financial for potential regulatory violations. The report mentioned no names, but described concerns about compliance procedures and reporting accuracy. Thomas Harper issued a statement claiming the investigation was standard procedure and that WealthMatrix maintains the highest ethical standards. He suggested the inquiry stemmed from misunderstandings that will be quickly resolved. When I arrived home that night, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The door to my apartment was slightly ajar, though the lock didn't appear forced. Inside, my living room had been systematically searched. My MBA textbooks were scattered across the floor, pages torn out. My laptop was missing, along with my paper notebooks containing course notes. I backed out of the apartment and called Diana, who arranged for an FBI agent to meet me. The agent took photographs and dusted for fingerprints, though he wasn't optimistic about finding anything useful. This was professional, he noted, examining the door. They used a bump key on your lock. No obvious prints. They knew what they were looking for. My course materials and computer, I confirmed. Nothing else seems to be missing. This escalates things, Diana told me when I called her afterward. We're dealing with people who are willing to break multiple laws to protect themselves. You should stay somewhere else for a few days. That night, I checked into a hotel under my mother's maiden name. As I tried to sleep, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Back off, or next time it won't just be your books. The following day, Dr. Mason connected me with Allison Parker, an attorney who specialized in whistleblower cases. Allison was a sharp, direct woman in her 50s, who had previously worked for the SEC Enforcement Division. They're trying to scare you, she said after I explained the situation. It's actually a good sign. It means they know how damaging your testimony could be. What about the break-in and threats? We'll file for a protective order, but more importantly, we need to prepare for their next move. Based on my experience, they'll try to discredit you publicly. Allison's prediction proved accurate. 2 days later, Amanda gave an interview to a financial news website, claiming that the SEC investigation was based on false allegations from a terminated employee seeking revenge. Though she didn't name me, Her description left no doubt about who she meant. This individual was dismissed for performance issues and ethical concerns, Amanda told the reporter. Now she's attempting to damage our reputation out of spite. We're confident the investigation will clear WealthMatrix of any wrongdoing. The article mentioned that Thomas Harper had hired Blackwell and Ross, one of the most prestigious defense firms in the country. The implication was clear. WealthMatrix had the resources to fight this battle indefinitely. As the pressure mounted, I received a disturbing call from Stephanie. "They know it's you," she whispered. "Thomas is moving assets around. I saw transfer orders for his personal accounts to a bank in the Cayman Islands. I think he's preparing to run." I immediately relayed this information to Diana, who promised to expedite the investigation. "We can't let him flee with client funds," she said. "This changes everything." The next day, my name was leaked to the press, despite the whistleblower protections. A financial blog published an article titled "Former Analyst Behind SEC Investigation of WealthMatrix," which included details about my MBA program and quoted sources close to the company describing me as disgruntled and unethical. The smear campaign intensified when Brian Taylor, Amanda's assistant, gave an interview claiming he had witnessed me falsifying reports and using company time for personal advancement. His accusations were vague, but damaging. The pressure took its toll financially and academically. My savings were dwindling as I paid for hotel rooms and legal consultations. Westridge Business School placed me on academic probation, citing ethical concerns following the media coverage. In my darkest moment, sitting alone in a hotel room with my career and education, apparently in ruins, I questioned whether coming forward had been worth it. Had I destroyed my future to expose wrongdoing that might never be properly punished? My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Greta Walker?" The voice was elderly, hesitant. "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Margaret Donovan. I'm a client of WealthMatrix Financial. Or I was. I read about what you did, coming forward about their practices." I tensed, preparing for more accusations. "I wanted to thank you," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "My husband and I had our retirement savings with them, almost $700,000. When I read about the investigation, I insisted we withdraw everything immediately. The account manager tried to discourage me, said it was all a misunderstanding, but I persisted." My throat tightened. "Were you able to get your money out?" "Yes, though they made it difficult. 2 days after we withdrew our funds, the SEC froze their accounts. If not for you, we might have lost everything we worked 40 years to save." After we hung up, I sat staring at the phone, tears streaming down my face. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt certain I had done the right thing, regardless of the personal cost. The following day brought unexpected support. 2 former WealthMatrix employees contacted the SEC, offering to corroborate my claims. 3 more clients came forward with documentation of misleading statements about their investment returns. The tide was turning, but Thomas and Amanda had one more card to play. In a press conference, they announced they had evidence that I had fabricated the compliance documentation issues to damage the company. "We have proof that Miss Walker herself accessed our systems after her termination and altered records," Thomas declared. "This isn't whistleblowing. It's corporate sabotage, motivated by revenge." The accusation was cleverly constructed. They were using my unauthorized access, which I had admitted to the SEC, to suggest I had actually created the evidence of wrongdoing rather than merely discovered it. It was a desperate move from desperate people. As Allison reminded me, they wouldn't be fighting this hard if they were innocent. With the formal hearing approaching, I steeled myself for the most challenging confrontation of my life. What I didn't expect was the bombshell revelation that would turn Thomas and Amanda against each other. The week before the formal SEC hearing, the pressure intensified to levels I hadn't thought possible. Despite whistleblower protection laws, my identity had been fully exposed in the financial press. Online financial forums were filled with debates about my motives and character. My professional reputation was being systematically dismantled by an organized campaign. Amanda Harper appeared on a popular financial podcast where she painted me as a vengeful, incompetent employee who had been rightfully terminated. Greta Walker was given every opportunity to improve her performance, she claimed smoothly. When she failed to meet our standards, she decided to retaliate by making false accusations. The host, clearly sympathetic to Amanda, asked leading questions about my character and motivations. Would you say she was always disgruntled? Or did this behavior emerge after she began her MBA program? The MBA was definitely a turning point, Amanda replied. She began to think she knew better than colleagues with decades of experience. Her arrogance became problematic. Each lie stung, but what hurt most was how convincing Amanda sounded. To listeners unfamiliar with the situation, I would sound like the villain of this story. The financial strain became increasingly difficult to manage. My savings were nearly depleted from hotel costs, legal consultations, and everyday expenses without income. Job applications went unanswered as the controversy made me radioactive in the financial industry. Even my education was in jeopardy. I received an email from the Dean of Students at Westridge Business School requesting a meeting to discuss concerns about recent publicity. When I arrived at his office, his expression was grave. Miss Walker, the university has received numerous complaints from alumni employed in the financial sector, as well as inquiries from potential employers of our graduates. Your involvement in this SEC case has raised questions about whether you violated professional ethics. I reported financial fraud, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. How is that unethical? The method of obtaining information is the concern. Unauthorized system access could potentially violate computer fraud statutes. The university has a responsibility to uphold certain standards. Are you expelling me? I asked directly. He shifted uncomfortably. For now, we're placing you on academic probation, pending the outcome of the SEC investigation. If you're cleared of wrongdoing, we can reassess. Walking across the campus afterward, I felt a profound sense of isolation. I had sacrificed my career, potentially my education, and certainly my financial stability to do what I believed was right. The weight of those choices pressed down on me, making each step feel leaden. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. Stay strong. More people inside are starting to question T and A. Not everyone believes their version. Her support meant everything, but I worried about her position. Be careful. Don't risk your job for me. Too late, came her reply. Already been called to HR twice about my association with a former employee. Worth it, though. That evening, an unexpected email arrived from Jackson Pierce, my former manager. Need to talk. Not by phone. Coffee shop on 4th and Pine. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. I arrived early, choosing a seat with a clear view of both the entrance and the emergency exit. Jackson appeared precisely at 7, looking tired and tense. Thank you for coming, he said, sitting down across from me. I can't stay long. They're watching everyone who had a good relationship with you. Why risk meeting me then? I asked. He pushed a flash drive across the table. Because what they're doing isn't just wrong, it's criminal. This contains internal emails between Thomas and Amanda from before your termination. They were specifically looking for ways to remove you because you had flagged inconsistencies in client reporting. You're giving me evidence? I'm giving the SEC evidence. You're just the conduit. He stood to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I tried to stop them from firing you. I always knew your MBA wasn't the real issue. You were just too honest for your own good. After Jackson left, I immediately contacted Diana Rodriguez and arranged to transfer the flash drive to the SEC. The emails it contained confirmed my suspicions. My termination had been planned specifically because I had begun questioning certain financial practices. As news of additional evidence reached WealthMatrix, Thomas and Amanda's united front began to crack. Financial blogs reported tension in the executive suite and conflicting statements from company leadership. Then came Amanda's countermove. In an exclusive interview with a major financial publication, she subtly shifted her position. While I maintain that Greta Walker's accusations are exaggerated, I was not directly involved in all compliance decisions. Those ultimately fell under the CEO's authority. Thomas responded with a statement emphasizing that Amanda had been responsible for day-to-day operational compliance while he focused on strategic direction. The blame game had begun. My attorney, Allison Parker, was delighted by this development. They're turning on each other. It's the beginning of the end. The university's position also began to soften as public perception shifted. The dean of students called to inform me that they were monitoring developments and appreciated the complexity of whistleblower situations. While I remained on probation, there was no longer talk of expulsion. 3 days before the formal hearing, Diana called with news that both shocked and vindicated me. We've been investigating Amanda Harper's background. She claimed to have been Chief Compliance Officer at Meridian Investments before joining WealthMatrix. There's no record of her ever holding that position. She lied about her qualifications? I asked, stunned, despite everything I knew about her. Completely fabricated. And there's more. Meridian settled an SEC investigation 2 years ago for similar compliance violations. Amanda wasn't named in that case, but she left the company immediately afterward. So Thomas hired someone with a history of compliance issues to oversee compliance at WealthMatrix? It appears so. And here's the most interesting part. We can find no verification that Amanda Harper is actually Thomas Harper's niece. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Amanda's rapid rise in the company, the unusual deference Thomas showed her, despite her relatively limited experience, the way they coordinated their deception so seamlessly. Their relationship isn't familial at all, is it? I said slowly. We believe it was a cover story to justify her hiring and unusually rapid promotion, Diana confirmed. We're still investigating the nature of their actual relationship. As the hearing approached, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and confidence. The truth was finally emerging, piece by piece. The personal and professional cost had been enormous, but I was beginning to see that my actions had prevented something much worse. Thousands of investors being defrauded in a public offering built on lies. The night before the hearing, I received one more threatening text. Last chance to withdraw your claims. We know where you live. I forwarded it to Diana without comment, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow would determine whether justice would prevail or whether wealth and influence would once again shield the powerful from accountability. Either way, I knew I had done the right thing, and that knowledge gave me the strength to face whatever came next. The SEC hearing room was smaller than I had imagined, with wood-paneled walls and a U-shaped table where 5 commissioners. Saturday to my left was Diana Rodriguez, with 2 other SEC attorneys. To my right sat Allison Parker, my whistleblower attorney. Across from us, at a separate table, Thomas Harper and Amanda Harper were flanked by 3 attorneys from Blackwell and Ross, the prestigious firm known for defending Wall Street's elite. Thomas wore an impeccably tailored gray suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, projecting the image of distinguished competence he had cultivated throughout his career. Amanda was dressed in a conservative navy blue suit, her expression composed and confident. Looking at them, you would never guess they were facing serious allegations that could result in criminal charges. The lead commissioner, Martin Reeves, called the hearing to order. This is a formal investigative proceeding regarding potential violations of securities laws by WealthMatrix Financial. We will hear testimony from all parties before making our determination. Diana Rodriguez presented the SEC's case first, methodically outlining the evidence of operating without a registered chief compliance officer, misrepresenting investment returns, and misusing client funds. She displayed emails, financial statements, and compliance documents on screens visible to everyone in the room. The pattern is clear, she concluded. WealthMatrix Financial systematically violated regulations designed to protect investors, while planning a public offering that would have brought thousands of new investors into a fundamentally fraudulent enterprise. Throughout her presentation, I watched Thomas and Amanda. Thomas maintained a mask of mild concern, occasionally whispering to his attorneys. Amanda remained perfectly still, her expression betraying nothing. When my turn came to testify, I felt a momentary surge of panic. The room seemed to tilt slightly as I took the witness chair. Thomas stared at me with cold contempt. Amanda's smile was razor-thin and venomous. Allison squeezed my hand briefly. "Just tell the truth," she whispered. "You have nothing to hide." I took a deep breath and began my testimony, describing my 5 years at WealthMatrix, my decision to pursue an MBA, and the events leading to my termination. I explained my discovery of the compliance violations and my decision to report them to the SEC. I understand that my method of obtaining this information was unauthorized, I acknowledged. After my termination, I used access credentials that should have been deactivated to enter the company's server room. I take full responsibility for that action. However, I believed then, as I believe now, that revealing these violations was necessary to protect investors and the integrity of the market. Thomas's lead attorney, James Wentworth, conducted a ruthless cross-examination, his approach clearly designed to discredit me personally rather than address the substance of my allegations. "Miss Walker, isn't it true that you were terminated for performance issues before accessing WealthMatrix systems?" I was terminated after Amanda Harper claimed my MBA program was unprofessional and interfered with my work, despite consistent, excellent performance reviews. "So, you admit you were pursuing outside interests during your employment?" "I was improving my professional qualifications on my own time, which enhanced my contributions to the company." He shifted tactics. "After your termination, you broke into the company's computer systems. Isn't that a crime?" "I used valid credentials that had not been properly deactivated. I did not break in the sense of hacking or forcing access." "But you knew you were no longer authorized to access those systems, correct?" "Yes, I knew that." "So your entire case rests on information obtained illegally, motivated by revenge for your termination?" "My actions were motivated by concern for investors and compliance with securities laws, not revenge." On and on it went, with Wentworth trying to paint me as a disgruntled former employee seeking vengeance. I maintained my composure, focusing on the substance of the violations rather than allowing myself to be baited into emotional responses. When Thomas Harper took the stand, he projected dignified indignation. "WealthMatrix has always maintained the highest ethical standards," he declared. "Any compliance oversights were administrative in nature, not intentional violations. He claimed ignorance of specific compliance requirements, suggesting that as CEO, he delegated such matters to appropriate personnel. I relied on Miss Harper to manage operational compliance, while I focused on client relationships and strategic direction. Amanda Harper followed with a carefully constructed testimony that attempted to distance herself from key decisions while maintaining the fiction that no serious violations had occurred. As Vice President of Operations, I did not have final authority over compliance matters, she stated smoothly. While I assisted with compliance documentation, ultimate responsibility rested with Mr. Maters. Harper, as CEO. The commissioners pressed her on her qualifications. Miss Harper, did you ever serve as Chief Compliance Officer at Meridian Investments? Commissioner Reeves asked. I worked closely with Meridian's compliance team, she answered, evading the direct question. That's not what I asked. Did you hold the title of Chief Compliance Officer at Meridian? Amanda hesitated for the first time. My role encompassed compliance functions, though the formal title may have been different. According to Meridian's records, you were never in their compliance department at all. You were an executive assistant to their marketing director. Is that correct? The color drained from Amanda's face. I had multiple responsibilities that evolved over time. The hearing room stirred with murmurs. Thomas Harper stared at Amanda with dawning horror. The most unexpected moment came when Jackson Pierce was called to testify. I hadn't known he would appear. As he entered the room, Amanda visibly tensed, while Thomas straightened in his chair. Jackson spoke calmly but firmly about the changes at WealthMatrix after Amanda's arrival. He described the systematic sidelining of employees who raised compliance concerns, including myself. Most damaging was his testimony about a meeting where Thomas and Amanda explicitly discussed operating without a chief compliance officer. Mr. Harper stated that hiring a new CCO would be an unnecessary expense given their plans for the company, Jackson testified. Miss Harper agreed, saying she could handle the paperwork to make it appear compliant. As Jackson's testimony continued, the unity between Thomas and Amanda visibly crumbled. They stopped consulting with each other, instead whispering separately to their attorneys. The strategy of presenting a united front was collapsing under the weight of evidence. The final blow came during Diana Rodriguez's questioning of Thomas Harper about his relationship with Amanda. Mr. Harper, you've repeatedly referred to Miss Harper as your niece. Can you clarify the nature of that relationship? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Amanda is the daughter of my late wife's sister. That's interesting, Diana replied, because we've thoroughly investigated both your family tree and Miss Harper's. There is no family connection whatsoever. In fact, Miss Harper changed her last name from Jenkins to Harper 3 years ago, shortly before joining WealthMatrix. The room fell silent. Thomas stared at his hands, unable to respond. Diana continued relentlessly. Mr. Harper, why did you misrepresent your relationship with Miss Harper to your employees and clients? After a long pause, Thomas spoke quietly. It simplified explaining her rapid advancement in the company. And what was the real reason for her rapid advancement? Thomas conferred with his attorney, who then addressed the commission. My client declines to answer on Fifth Amendment grounds. Amanda's composure finally shattered. This is ridiculous, she burst out. Thomas knew exactly what was happening with compliance. He directed every decision about client fund management. I was following his instructions explicitly. Thomas turned to her, his face flushed with anger. You claimed to have compliance expertise. You assured me your methods were legal. This was your system, Amanda. My system? Her laugh was brittle. You've been running this scheme for years before I arrived. I just streamlined it. Everything I did was with your approval and under your direction." Their attorneys frantically tried to silence them, but the damage was done. The carefully constructed narrative of administrative oversights had given way to mutual accusations of deliberate fraud. Commissioner Reeves called for order. "I think we've heard enough to make a determination. This commission will review all testimony and evidence before issuing our ruling. This hearing is adjourned." As we prepared to leave, I caught Thomas staring at me with a mixture of hatred and defeat. Amanda avoided my gaze entirely, her attention focused on her attorney, who was speaking to her in urgent, hushed tones. Outside the hearing room, Diana touched my arm. "You did well in there, very composed." "What happens now?" I asked. "The commission will issue their findings, likely within a few weeks. Based on what we saw today, I expect they'll refer this case to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution." Allison was more direct. "They're finished. The only question now is how severe the penalties will be." As we walked toward the elevators, I felt a strange emptiness where anxiety had lived for so many months. The truth was finally out, but the cost had been enormous. My career, my education, my financial security had all been casualties of doing the right thing. Had it been worth it? The answer came in an unexpected form. As we reached the lobby, an elderly couple approached me hesitantly. "Miss Walker?" the man asked. "I'm Harold Donovan. This is my wife, Margaret. We were WealthMatrix clients." I recognized Margaret's voice from our phone conversation. "I remember. You withdrew your retirement savings just before the accounts were frozen." Margaret took my hand in both of hers. "Because of you. You saved our entire life's work. We just wanted to thank you in person." Their gratitude was overwhelming. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt with absolute certainty that every sacrifice had been worthwhile. 3 weeks after the hearing, the SEC issued its ruling. WealthMatrix Financial was found to have committed multiple violations of securities laws, including operating without a registered chief compliance officer, misrepresenting investment returns to clients, and misusing client funds for unauthorized purposes. The company was ordered to pay $7 million in penalties and client restitution. More significantly, the commission referred the case to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. 2 days later, Thomas Harper and Amanda Harper were indicted on multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The financial press, which had once questioned my motives and character, now described me as a courageous whistleblower who had exposed significant fraud at considerable personal risk. Articles highlighted the importance of whistleblower protections and the value of ethical employees in the financial industry. WealthMatrix was placed under receivership, with an independent firm appointed to manage its assets and operations, while criminal proceedings moved forward. The planned public offering was permanently canceled, preventing what would have been millions in losses for unwitting investors. Diana Rodriguez called me personally to share the news about my whistleblower award. "The SEC has determined that you qualify for 20% of the monetary sanctions recovered. With the $7 million penalty, that amounts to $1.4 million. I sat down hard, unable to process the figure. $1.4 million? The commission took into account the significance of the information you provided, the assistance you offered throughout the investigation, and the personal and professional risks you took to come forward. This award is well-deserved, Greta. Financial security was only the beginning of my redemption. The dean of students at Westridge Business School called me to his office again, but this time his demeanor was completely different. "Miss Walker, in light of recent developments, The university has not only lifted your academic probation, but wishes to offer you a full scholarship to complete your MBA program. A full scholarship? I repeated, stunned. Your actions exemplify the ethical leadership we strive to instill in our students. The faculty has unanimously agreed that you represent the values of our institution at their highest level. Job offers began to arrive as well. Financial firms emphasizing ethical practices and strong compliance cultures reached out, eager to add someone with my demonstrated integrity to their teams. Regulatory agencies inquired about my interest in compliance oversight positions. Jackson Pierce had landed on his feet, accepting a position as chief financial officer at a respected investment firm that valued his ethical stance. He called to thank me for my courage and to offer me a position on his team once I completed my MBA. I need people I can trust. Absolutely, he said. People who will do the right thing, even when it's difficult. Stephanie Williams had also fared well. After testifying in support of the SEC investigation, she had been hired as a senior accountant at a major consulting firm, with a significant increase in salary and responsibility. One morning, I received a letter from Margaret and Harold Donovan, the elderly couple whose retirement savings had been saved by my whistleblowing. Inside was a handwritten note expressing their gratitude, along with a photograph of them with their grandchildren. Because of you, Margaret had written, we can still help with college tuition for these little ones. Some heroes wear capes. You wear courage. As the criminal cases against Thomas and Amanda proceeded, evidence emerged that their relationship had been romantic as well as professional. The niece fiction had been created to explain her rapid advancement while hiding their personal involvement. Both were facing significant prison sentences for their roles in the fraud. The business world took notice of the case. Financial publications ran special issues on compliance and ethics in the industry. Regulatory bodies strengthened whistleblower protections and enhanced monitoring of firms similar to WealthMatrix. My case became a cautionary tale taught in business ethics courses, including at my own MBA program. 6 months after the SEC ruling, I received an unexpected invitation from Carolyn Bennett, founder and CEO of Integrity Financial Advisors, a firm known for its commitment to ethical practice and transparent client relationships. I've been following your story with great interest, she told me over lunch. What happened to you at WealthMatrix was inexcusable, but your response was extraordinary. When you complete your MBA, I'd like you to consider joining our leadership team. In what capacity? I asked, intrigued. Initially, as Director of Compliance, with a path to partnership, we need people who understand that ethics isn't just about following rules, it's about making hard choices, even when they come with personal cost. As I neared completion of my MBA, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. What had begun as a simple desire for professional advancement through education had become a profound lesson in integrity, courage, and resilience. The path had been far more difficult than I could have imagined, but the destination was beyond anything I could have hoped for. On graduation day, as I accepted my MBA diploma, I spotted Margaret and Harold Donovan in the audience, beaming with pride as if I were their own daughter. Stephanie and Jackson were there too, along with Diana Rodriguez and Allison Parker. Even some of my former colleagues from WealthMatrix attended, those who had quietly supported me but been afraid to speak out. The commencement speaker, a respected business leader known for ethical leadership, closed with words that resonated deeply with me. Your career will present moments when the right path is clear but difficult. In those moments, Remember that character is not built through comfort, but through challenges met with courage. 2 weeks after graduation, I joined Integrity Financial Advisors as Director of Compliance. My first project was developing enhanced whistleblower protections and ethical reporting channels for employees. Every policy I created was informed by my personal experience, the fear, the isolation, and ultimately, the vindication of standing for truth. 1 year to the day after the SEC hearing, I received a final letter from Diana Rodriguez. Thomas Harper had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for securities fraud. Amanda Harper had received 8 years after cooperating with prosecutors. WealthMatrix clients had received full restitution for their losses. None of this would have happened without your courage, Diana wrote. You saved countless people from financial harm and helped restore a measure of integrity to the industry. That evening, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sunset over the city skyline. The journey had been painful, the cost considerable, but the reward went beyond financial compensation or professional advancement. I had discovered my own capacity for courage and the profound satisfaction of knowing that, when faced with a critical moral choice, I had chosen integrity over self-interest. In the financial world, where success is often measured in dollars and cents, I had found a different metric: the value of standing for what's right, regardless of the personal cost. That lesson, more than any business theory or financial model, would guide me throughout my career. If you've ever faced a moment where doing the right thing seemed too costly, or where standing alone seemed too frightening, I hope my story gives you strength. Sometimes the greatest professional achievement isn't a promotion or a bonus, but the knowledge that you acted with integrity when it mattered most. Have you ever had to make a difficult ethical choice in your career or education? What helped you find the courage to do what you knew was right? Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about professional integrity and personal growth. And if you know someone facing a difficult ethical dilemma, share this story with them as a reminder that doing the right thing, though often challenging, ultimately leads to the greatest reward. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to stand for truth in your own life journey.